Welcome to the Adult Age session of the First United Church of Oak Park. This morning we're welcoming Max Weiss, the rabbi of the Oak Park Temple. Rabbi Weiss got his degree from the Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati, Ohio. He and his family moved to Oak Park so he could take his current position in 2009. Since being here, he has participated in several interfaith groups designed to promote interfaith communication and cooperation. And he has also been a special friend of the First United Church. For example, in about 3 or 4 years ago, he offered his temple so that we could hold a service because it seemed too dangerous to hold the service in our building. If you want to know more about that, hang around until the question period when you can ask more about that or anything else. Thanks for coming. Rabbi Weiss.
Bravo.
In a room this size, it feels a little awkward to me to have a headset and a speaker on, but I understand that because of streaming, that's necessary. I'm very glad to be able to be here today. And it's really an honor. If you want me to, is this volume okay? Should I turn it up? Okay. It really is an honor to be at First United Church. Your church is such an incredible pillar of the Oak Park community. Aside from being here for various community congregations, events, and having wonderful conversations with pastors who've been here, I've certainly spent a lot of time in the food pantry, working there with our volunteers and your volunteers to help support the people in our community who need support. I just want to say a word of appreciation to your new pastors, Pastor Jones. I'm so glad to make your acquaintance, and I'm looking forward over the years to get to know you and your family better and welcome you to the community. I'm so glad that you're here. And Ms. Hubbard, thank you so much for inviting me, and also to Dale and Mr. Sorensen. Thank you so much for getting the wheels in motion to having me here. It's really an honor to be able to be here with you today. The topic today is one I thought would be so much fun to talk about. Things that Jewish people wish that their non-Jewish neighbors knew about them. I thought, the world is wide open. And then I started to really think about it, and that's a hard question. Because I don't know what people know and what they don't know. So part of what I want to do is just give a general overview and then ask questions, answer questions that you all have. The Jewish religion is a very text-based religion, so we're going to do some text study together. We're going to look at some texts that are foundational to us and talk about that as well. But I want to start by saying that Judaism is the way of life of the Jewish people. That's all it is. That takes a lot of unpacking. But Judaism is the way of life of the Jewish people. And some of that is religious, some of that is cultural, some of that might be national. It's all of those things that are tied into one big, messy, beautiful knot together. Today, I want to use a structure that is a traditional Jewish structure for understanding who we are. Judaism can be understood, and Jews understand it and connect to Judaism in 3 primary ways: God, spirituality; Torah, learning; and Israel, Jewish community. So we're going to take a look at those 3 big, general, broad categories. And I'll be glad to answer questions as we go. So if something needs clarification, please just raise your hand. Generally, when I'm teaching, I like to be around a big table, and that way we can all make eye contact with one another. This is a little bit more frontal than I'm used to, but I'm glad to engage. I want to start by saying Judaism is not like Christianity in that we are an ethno-religion. We are not just a religion, we're an ethno-religion. There is a sense of peoplehood that we have. It's not race, it's not genetic, it's perhaps tribal. People can come into the religion, people can flow out, but we are more than just our religious practices. So that's a very important baseline for understanding. And it's very different than the way Christianity and Islam, the other two major Western religions, think about themselves. You can tell me if I'm wrong. There are other ethno-religions in the world, many of them in fact. If you take a look at Google, you can ask for those. It's okay, people can just pass them back. Is that all right? Okay. So, in the Jewish self-understanding, there are three primary biblical stories that define us in our relationship with God. We are a storytelling people. Jesus, born into the Jewish tradition, was a storytelling person. So the three primary stories that define our relationship are the creation of the world, right? God is the creator of all humanity. That's story number one. Story number two, we were slaves in Egypt and God set us free. It's the Exodus from Egypt. We were slaves and now we're free. And that comes with a sense of appreciation, but also of obligation. And the third story is the story of Sinai. All Jewish people stood at Sinai to receive Torah, to receive communication from God. Moses was the one who went up the mountain, but every single Jewish person, born and or not yet born, was there, including people who have chosen Judaism later in life. Those three stories are incredibly important stories in our own self-definition, and different Jewish people attach to those stories in different ways. Some of us, I should say, are very universalistic in our approach. God is the God for all humanity, and we are part of humanity, and we attach to God in that way. That's how we understand God. Others are very particularistic in their approach. God gave the Torah to us at Mount Sinai. We have obligations because of that. And then there are the Exodus Jews, the ones who focus on freedom. So those three stories really help define us in our relationship with God. Does anyone have questions about that before I move on? Yes, please.
When I think of Mount Sinai, I think of the Ten Commandments.
Yes.
No, the Torah is way bigger than the Ten Commandments, correct?
613 according to our tradition, yes.
It's like the Torah evolves, right?
Oh, that's an interesting, I'm not sure exactly what you're asking. So we
It's
think,
something you interpret every day.
yes, so the question was that when Mr. Jens thinks about Mount Sinai, he thinks of the Ten Commandments, but the Torah is much more than 10 commandments. So how does the Torah evolve? How does it change? That's probably a question more for section 2 than section 1, when I'm talking about the Torah itself. But the short answer is yes, we are still learning from the Torah, and we still have ongoing regular study at our synagogue, at every synagogue around the world, where we come together and study Torah and learn from it and try to figure out how it impacts our lives today, which can be very hard when you're studying about sacrifices in the temple as it stood in Jerusalem. But we still do that on an ongoing basis. It's very, very important. So the most important section, yes, Mr. Ashman?
What about the blood sacrifice?
the blood sacrifices that the Israelites made in the temple. We understand that in the year 70, when the temple was destroyed, the requirement to sacrifice animals ceased, and we replaced that requirement with prayer and with acts of what we would call gemilut chasadim, loving kindness. So we replaced sacrifice with prayer to God and to mitzvot, to doing positive things in our world.
Is that true throughout all Jewish congregations?
Yes, it is. From the very beginning, from the year 200 when the Mishnah was written, that was true. So I want to come back to the section that I was talking about, our relationship with God. The Jewish community is a liturgical people. We follow a set liturgy. That set liturgy includes a cycle of prayers. We say the same prayers pretty much 3 times a day traditionally. And then we also have a set cycle of liturgical readings, Torah readings. So that during the course of the year we read through the entire first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible. And we have prophetic readings that go along with that. Do you all have a lectionary?
Yes.
Is your lectionary the same year to year, or is it different? A 3-year cycle. Okay. So it's a similar sort of idea. You understand that. Part of our prayer cycle, part of our prayer readings, is a prayer that many people would consider the most important prayer. It's at the top of page 1. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. You've probably heard it before. That's not really a prayer, though, is it? It's a statement.
Yeah.
It's essentially a statement of belief. We have you heard the term ethical monotheism before? Right. Ethical monotheism is the belief that there is one God, and God has expectations for how we behave. There are 3 primary ethical monotheistic religions in the world: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. There are other ethical monotheistic religions as well, but they're smaller. So the Shema is a statement that there is one God, and God has expectations for how we would act. What does it mean when you hear God is one? This is, by the way, this is not an anti-Trinitarian statement. This far precedes the Christian belief. So, when you hear that statement, what does that mean? What do you hear?
We don't know enough to make a guess.
Well, you can. I'm not asking what do I hear. I'm asking what do you hear. So, yes.
Yeah, from my Catholic background,
Uh-huh.
God is one, God is in all of us. We're all part of the same God love.
Lovely. We're all part of. That's an interesting statement because that's pantheism almost. Like we're all part of God. That's a big statement. I might fit into that category myself. Don't tell the members of my congregation. So what are other things that you hear when you hear that statement?
I think it means we're not like those foolish people in the past who thought there were a whole bunch of gods.
Okay, so it could be like a anti-polytheism.
Yeah.
Like there's only one God. It's interesting because you can also read this as a statement of monolatry. There might be many gods, but God is our God. Adonai is our God. So, the Lord is one, or Adonai is one. It could be one of the gods. Adonai is our God, and he's among the other gods. I don't want to talk about that too much. But this statement is central to our belief as a statement of monotheism. Do we have any other sheets?
I'll share with them.
Okay, there you go.
There are more back here as well.
Oh, okay, great. You can, as people come in, if you don't mind, just grabbing them. So I want to take a look at a couple of texts. I brought way too much for us to cover in an hour. I always do that. I'd rather have you have things to take home with you to think about. So we're not going to go through everything, but would somebody read for us number 1 on page 1? It's English, yes.
Saying that he arose and taking his wives, his two maidservants, and the slave children, he crossed the ford of Jacob. After taking them across the stream, he sent across all his possessions. Jacob was left alone, and another wrestled with him until the break of dawn. When he saw that he had not prevailed against him, he wrenched Jacob's hip and his socket, so that the socket of his hip was strained as he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for dawn is breaking." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." Said the other, "What is your name?" He replied, "Jacob." Said he, "Your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven for the beings divine and human, and you have prevailed."
Is this a familiar story to you? It's one of Jacob's encounters with the divine. Jacob is about to go see his brother Esau. The last time Jacob saw his brother Esau was when he was running away, when Jacob was running away. And Esau said, "When I see you again, I'm going to kill you." So Jacob is returning home to see Esau. And they do a, spoiler alert, a happy reconciliation, more or less. And then Jacob has this encounter where he wrestles, we think of it as wrestling with an angel. He wrestles with the divine being, and out of that wrestling match comes Jacob's new name, Israel, one who struggles with God. That's literally what it means. That has become the name. We are the people of Israel. The Jewish people, people who practice Judaism, are considered B'nai Yisrael, the people of Israel. The reason that we are considered that, how many of you heard of the 12 tribes? So Jacob has 12 sons. They become the progenitors of the 12 tribes. They are the ancestors of our people. Their father is Jacob. Jacob becomes Israel. We are the children of Israel. Like, it's kind of a literal lineage thing. But it's also a perhaps indicative of an attitude. Like, we struggle with this. We struggle with the idea of God. We struggle with God. We struggle with what it means to be human, with what it means to be in a relationship with the divine being. And that struggle permeates everything in our lives, in our modern religious lives. Yes, sir?
Is there a connection? Do many Jewish people see a connection with that story and the wrestling with God or the divine being and their study of the Torah in terms of, like, this is something we engage with and wrestle with and interpret and kind of live out?
Yes, it's part of the process. So that's studying Torah doesn't mean that I, the rabbi, stand in front of the group and interpret it for the group. Some other religions might have that approach. That's not the Jewish approach. The Jewish approach, well, the rabbi might have more education, might have more of a sense of the traditional leanings of an interpretation of the text. People have a say. We study together. We're literate. We read. We want to learn. We want to engage with this. So yes, it is wrestling in that sense. I want to take a look at 2 more stories from this section. Number 2, the word that you're going to have trouble pronouncing is Berdichever. Okay, who'd like to read? Okay, great.
The Berdichever
Rabbi?
called over a tailor and asked him to relate his argument with God on the day before. The tailor said, "I declared to God, you wish me to repent of my sins, but I have committed only minor offenses. I may have kept leftover cloth, or I may have eaten in a non-Jewish home where I worked, without washing my hands. But you, O Lord, have committed grievous sins. You have taken away babies from their mothers and mothers from their babies. Let us be quits. May you forgive me, and I will forgive you." Said the Rebbe, "Why did you let God off so easily? You might have forced him to redeem all Israel."
So this is a This comes out of the Hasidic tradition, 1600s or so, relatively late, a time when Jewish people were dealing with, as we have almost our entire history, an incredible amount of persecution, primarily at the hands of Christians in Europe. And the story, it sort of speaks for itself. Just like Abraham in the Bible arguing on behalf of Sodom and Gomorrah, we don't have to stand silent before God. We can argue. And as to how much good it does, I'll leave that up to you. Maybe it's good for our souls. Now let's skip ahead to page 2, number 7. So this comes straight out of our prayer book. Traditionally, Jewish people would say this every single morning. We wake up, traditionally there's a set of prayers that we say. This is like the second or third prayer that we say. We actually have a prayer in there right before this one that we say after we use the restroom. It's very earthy. Who'd like to read number 7 for us? Please.
We have a soul, a life force, which was created pure.
Okay, now that's just the introduction. That's the title. The prayer itself.
The soul that you have given me, O God, is a pure one. You have created and formed it, breathed it into me, and within me you sustain it. So long as I have breath, therefore I will give thanks to you, O Lord my God, and God of all ages, Master of all creation, Lord of every human spirit. Blessed is the Lord, in whose hands are the souls of all the living and the spirits of all flesh.
The reason that I bring this particular prayer to you is because this is a real differentiating point from Christianity, at least as I understand Christianity. This is saying God gave us our souls clean. Right? We, untainted by sin. What we do with our lives is what changes the nature of our souls, and changes our relationship with God. But this prayer that we say every day says something different than what my understanding of Christianity says, which is that we are born in a state of sin, and that it's through Jesus that people retain or attain relationship with God. But tell me more. So is that different?
Not every denomination believes that.
So you guys are a combination of Presbyterian and UCC, right?
Right.
So
We do not believe that.
We do not.
We do not.
So-
believe that. No, but some-
is it the UCC side that doesn't believe it, or the Presbyterian side?
Neither side believes that.
Yes,
So I think it's more,
because early Presbyterians believed it.
yeah, it's more mainline Protestants don't really buy even most of that.
Interesting. Okay.
So it's the idea of original sin versus a more progressive interpretation would be original blessing. So
Okay.
there is a strain within Christianity that would push back on that idea.
That's wonderful.
You know what Rabbi Weiss said about it?
What did
There's
Rabbi
no
Weiss
such thing as original sin. It's all been done before.
Nice. That's a good line. That's a very good line. So I appreciate that very much, and I would love, maybe we'll have a conversation then about what's the purpose of Jesus at a different point. If there's no original sin. So yes.
Well, how does how does the Jewish faith connect the Adam and Eve
Yes.
sin with this prayer? I mean, doesn't that pure soul get, corrupted in the Garden of Eden?
Well, think about what happens in the Garden of Eden. Eve, tempted by the serpent, gives Adam and herself fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Essentially, gives them free will. That's the Jewish understanding. It's not that Eve is tainting humanity forever. but rather that Eve is giving humanity the gift of free will. And that's a mixed blessing. But it's really not. It's really not. So what the primary way the Jewish people relate to God is through mitzvot. How many of you have heard the word mitzvah before? A mitzvah is not a good deed. A mitzvah is a commandment from God. The Torah is full of them. You mentioned the top 10 commandments. They're not actually the top 10. They're just a part of the list. So we have all of these different expectations for how God expects us to act in the world. Those are irrelevant if we don't have free will. If we're automatons, like we consider the malachim, the angels, to be, then we don't have a way to relate to God through mitzvot. We just don't have a choice. So we understand that free will gives us this choice. So Eve gave us this gift that is not a taint to our souls, but allows our souls to be damaged, allows us to damage our souls ourselves. Mr. Ashman?
Yes, but given the fact that we have free will, then we are also free to do evil things also.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
And so what is to mitigate that?
Like how do we erase the evil once it's been done? So as part of our daily prayers, we ask God to forgive us. But the Jewish understanding of forgiveness is that God doesn't forgive us until we have tried our best to repair the acts of damage that we've done. So sometimes that may not be entirely possible, and then there are methodologies to achieve forgiveness. But we have to first fix the problem that we've done, and then once we've done that, we can go to God and say, God, I am sorry. And there's no intermediary, so there's no confession necessarily. You don't go to a priest and get forgiven. You go directly to God. And we can do that daily, or there's a big day each year that we do that called Yom Kippur. It's literally means the Day of Atonement. But we repeat over and over during that day that the Day of Atonement does not atone until we have made peace with one another. So it doesn't fix the things that I've done wrong. It fixes my relationship with God that have been severed when I have done things that
We're not able to accomplish that.
are wrong. We can try.
We can try, but we're not able to actually complete that.
So the final act of atonement is our death. So it's,
Something to look forward to.
well, but it is something to look forward to, right? It is like,
So what do you mean by we're not able to complete?
No matter how hard we try, we still have the element of free will, and so we can continue to do evil things.
yes. So the Jewish tradition, I don't want to get too much into this, but the Jewish tradition does say that how do you know when your repentance is complete? Like, let's say, imagine I stole something. I have returned the items I've stolen. I've paid compensation for it. I have gone to God and asked for forgiveness. And then I have to never do that again. How do you know you've completed this task of atonement? You haven't done it again until you die. That's how you know. And the same is true for any number of categories of sin that we can do. And I don't want to go too much into this because there's a lot more material to cover. So on page 2, the first is our relationship with God, and then we have a relationship with text and with study. Text is our primary way of connecting to our past and history. The Jewish people, 3,000 years old, 3,500 2,500 years old, something like that. We're old. We are very old people. And we live our history. So it lives in us. We connect to it. When my Torah study is meeting on Friday morning and we're studying the text of Torah, we are engaging in a conversation that is over 2,000 years old. We are the newest voices in that conversation, but we are talking to people and learning from rabbis who lived 2,000 years ago and learning from this text that was written down thousands of years ago. That's Judaism can, in one sense, be understood as a conversation through time. And our texts are our ways of engaging. And my word is not the final word, and my grandchildren's word won't be the final word, and their grandchildren's word won't be the final word. There's a moment like at a bar or bat mitzvah when a 13-year-old child leads our worship and reads from our scripture and teaches us a little bit. Before they do all of the read from the script, the Torah, I have them line up with their parents on the bima, and I say to them that they are engaging in a chain of tradition that stretches back thousands of years. And that the Torah, the scroll, is heavy. And it's not just heavy with the parchment and the wood, it's heavy with the weight of all of these people that came before them, that have added a little bit to it. So then the kids take the Torah for themselves. It's a very symbolic moment. That moment comes from a book called Pirkei Avot, which is literally chapters of the fathers. It's sort of like a collection of aphorisms, Ben Franklin's aphorisms, a bird in the hand, etc. So the Pirkei Avot starts with the phrase, Moshe Kibel Torah Sinai, Mismaruha Yoshua. Moses received the Torah at Mount Sinai and transmitted it to Joshua to the prophets to the elders to the men of the great assembly, so that there's this unbroken chain of tradition that is coming down to us from Moses at Sinai. Yes, sir?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like Judaism, like many Christian sects, is an evolving religion. It's not set in stone.
It was created as an evolving religion, which means that it was set in stone that we should always be evolving. So the Romans destroyed the temple in the year 70 of the Common Era. When the temple was destroyed, the leaders of the Jewish community, the rabbis at the time, because the priests were irrelevant once the temple was destroyed, the rabbis had a challenge put in front of them, which was to try to figure out how to endure as a people when our primary way of connecting to God was severed. The primary way of connecting to God before the destruction of the temple was sacrifice. And once our avenue to sacrifice animals was cut off, we had to figure out what that was going to look like. So they created a book called the Mishnah, which took the rules in the Torah and tried to figure out how to live by them. So, example, the Torah says that we have to keep Shabbat. You know what the Sabbath is?
Yes.
So we have to keep the Sabbath. What does that mean, keep the Sabbath? Like, keep it where? Do we leave that open to interpretation so that everybody keeps Sabbath in the way that they see fit? Or should we, there's some seats up front, come on up.
No.
I promise not to stand too close. Here, let me just take this out. So the Sabbath, then, as an example, the rabbis have to figure out, okay, the Torah says to do this, we have to figure out how to do this. Where do we get the rules for how to do this? They came up with a system based on, it doesn't matter, I don't want to get in the weeds, but a system that made sense, logical sense. And then they wrote that down. And then we needed to figure out moment by moment, day by day, age by what that meant. And that evolved into a book called the Talmud, which you've probably heard of before. So the Talmud is literally a conversation across probably 700 or 800 years. The Mishnah will say something, and then there's a section called the Gemara, which interprets that. The Gemara is not written in Hebrew, it's written in Aramaic, and which was the lingua franca, that doesn't even make sense, which was the common language of the Jews during that time period. And then, over the last 1,300 years, since the Talmud was written down, other people have come up with their interpretations and written it around the outside. I'm just going to take this book and pass it back. You're welcome to look through it. This particular book of the Talmud is rules about Passover. If you've heard of Passover before. Yeah. So that's some of the rules about Passover in that Talmudic section. So that's part of our textual tradition. But that textual tradition, it's hard to access. So around the year 1000 of the Common Era, a man named Maimonides took that and codified it. So he took all of the rules, for example, about, like right now in the Talmud, rules about Hanukkah, which is one of our minor holidays, are written down in the section about the types of lights that were allowed to burn on Shabbat, like what the wicks should be like, what the oil should be like, what the goal is. And Hanukkah is put in there because the rabbis in the stream of consciousness thinking were like, oh wait, I've got another holiday that involves fire as well. Let's talk about that now for a little while. And so they came back and wrote that down in that section about Shabbat, when instead it should have been in its own section. So Maimonides took all of that and divided up so it's more easily accessible. Those are called books of codes. Yes, Mr.
Going back
Snyder?
a bit.
Yes.
You said there's a difference between a priest and a rabbi.
Yes.
Can you clarify that a little bit?
Sure. Remember I mentioned that there were 12 tribes? So one of those tribes is the tribe of Levi. Have you heard of the tribe of Levi? The Levi became the priestly class for the Israelites, and they were the ones who were in charge of taking care of things at the temple. There was a subclass of Levites, or a subfamily called the Kohanim, the priests. And the Kohanim and Levites are both forms of priests. Their duties took place in the temple in Jerusalem. There's some minor things that they do in the synagogue world today. And then after that, when the temple was destroyed, they didn't have jobs to do so much anymore. There was another group called the rabbis that were coming up right around before the destruction of the temple, so even before the year 70. And they were responsible for the interpretation of these different rules and laws. So rabbis are not priests necessarily, although some might be from that family. It's a religious democratization. The way that one became a priest is that you were born into it. The way that one became a rabbi is that you studied into it. And anybody could become a rabbi once they reached an appropriate level of education. Does that answer your question? Great. All right, so Torah, number one. I gave you some examples of different things that you find in Jewish texts. This is from Pirkei Avot, that section that I mentioned was written as part of the Mishnah in the year 200. If I am not for myself, who is for me? And if I am only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when? What does that mean when you hear it?
It means you have an obligation to the community.
Okay.
You belong to the community and you have an obligation to the community.
Lovely. What else? There's more in there than...
And the community has an obligation to take care of me too.
Okay. What else do you see in here?
You gotta do it right now. You gotta start now.
Right,
You can't put it off.
there's no time like the present, right? If you see something, do something. But it starts with a different statement.
Self-care is good.
Yeah, you have to take care of yourself, or you won't be able to take care of anybody else, right? If I am not for myself, who is for me? That's can be a very selfish statement, right? If you stop there, you got a problem.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say that. If you stop there, I've got a problem. If I stop there, you've got a problem. So then we have the second line. And if I am only for myself, what am I? So, yes, you have to look out for yourself, but you're kind of a jerk, if that's all you do. And then it goes on to say, Im lo עכשיו אימתא. If not now, then. So this is this is the sort of thing that you might find in Pirkei Avot, which is from the Mishnah. Then we have a comment. Sifra is it's a book of Midrash. It's commentary on text. Some Midrash is story, and some is connected to Jewish law. The rabbis like to give themselves challenges, and this is one connected to a challenge that perhaps either Jesus had studied or gave to himself. The rabbis are having a long conversation about what is the most important commandment. What is the most important commandment? Love your neighbor as yourself. Rabbi Akiva says this is the greatest principle in the Torah. Ben Azai quoted the verse, this is the book of the generations of Adam. Like he's disagreeing. In the day that God created man in the image of God, made he him. He said this principle is greater than that. So there's an argument. What is the greatest principle in the Torah? Is the greatest principle in the Torah love your neighbor as yourself? Or is the greatest principle in the Torah God made all humanity? What do you think? The second part is God made all humanity, and humanity is created in the image of God. Which is a greater commandment?
Well, Jesus said the second one first.
Say that again. Jesus said,
love the Lord your God and the neighbor of yourself.
okay.
Start out with that.
Well, what do you think?
Well,
I'm not.
Love your God.
Yes.
One of these, love your neighbor as yourself, that is applicable today.
Okay.
And one of them is a statement about something that happened a long time ago. And is the basis for the statement of how to behave today.
That's a lovely way to look at it. Yes.
Yeah, similar to what you said, I think if you take to heart the idea that all people are created in the image of God, love your neighbors yourself springs forth from that.
Okay. You can derive it, right? Okay. Yeah, if all human beings are created in the image of God, then we have obligations. Yes. Great. Well, we have what, 15 more minutes? Or?
Yes.
Wow, time flies. So the other ones are about tzedakah, about the need for engaging with our world around us. We don't believe in charity. We believe in tzedakah. Tzedakah is a word that comes from a word that means justice or righteousness. My helping somebody who is needy is not, or needs something, is not an act of love. It is an expectation for what it means to be human. I don't have to love you to help you. I don't have to feel anything in particular to help you. I'm obligated to do it regardless of how I feel about you. And the Torah commands it. The Torah says, leave the corners of your field, take care of the poor, the needy, the stranger in your midst. Repeat it over and over and over again. So that's a way that we are supposed to act in the world. You can take a look at that on your own. Let's go on to the final section, which begins on page 4. That section is Israel. Israel, as I said before, is the word that we use for our people. We are the children of Israel, Bnei Israel. It is also the word for the name for the country on the Mediterranean, in the Middle East, sandwiched between Lebanon, Egypt, and Jordan and Syria. So that's the name that they chose when they became a country. So let's take a look at some statements about Klal Yisrael, the community of Israel. This first one from Deuteronomy. This is from, I'll read it. You stand this day, all of you, before the Lord your God, your tribal heads, your elders, and your officials, all the men of Israel, your children, your wives, even the stranger within your camp, from wood chopper to water drawer, to enter into the covenant of the Lord your God, which the Lord your God is concluding with you this day, with its sanctions, to the end that God may establish you this day as God's people and be your God, as God promised you and swore to your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I make this covenant with its sanctions, not with you alone, but with those who are standing here with us this day before the Lord your God, and with those who are not with us here this day. So this is understood from this passage in Deuteronomy to be a statement that God's covenant with the people of Israel is not just with the people who stood there at that moment, but with every generation subsequent, including people who choose Judaism, convert into the Jewish people. Other statements about Bnei Yisrael: don't separate yourself from the community. Kol Yisrael Rabim Zeh B'Zeh, all Israel is responsible for one another. And then we read number 4 earlier. So we understand as the Jewish people that we have an obligation to one another, to the world, and we try to live that. So that's where I want to leave us before I open up to questions. Yes?
I'm going to start with kind of a tricky one. Sorry.
Okay, it's okay.
So I'm really curious. From a Christian perspective, we see the Torah as the Old Testament, right?
Sure.
And clearly there's so much more than just that in Jewish tradition, which I've learned today. So I'm thankful for you teaching us that. But I'm curious, from a Jewish perspective, what your perception of Christians kind of taking this one isolated chunk of your religious scriptures and kind of pulling it into our own viewpoints.
That's a great question. How do you feel about the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints? Which has done the same thing for Christianity that Christianity has done with Judaism.
Yeah, I don't think about them a whole lot when I do.
So and I think that's your answer. We think about Christians as our neighbors, but we don't give a lot of thought to the way that Christians treat Jewish scripture. Through time, we understand, Christians use the same Bible we do, although in a different order, and fine, right? We just kind of let it be there. It's I don't know if that answers your question.
Christians use the New Testament, which is.
Christians use yes. Well, primarily.
Thank you.
When you do your lectionary readings, it's usually New Testament, Old Testament, and then something else sometimes, Psalms or whatever. Yeah.
At the beginning, I don't remember exactly what it was, but you said 3 things, and one of them was ethno something.
Yes. Judaism is an ethno-religion. So, yes.
I think for people who are not Jewish, we tend to ask ourselves, where is it religion and where is it ethnicity?
Yes.
So this phrase means a lot to me because that kind of answers the question. But could you describe that a little more?
Well, remember what I started with that Judaism is the way of life of the Jewish people, which is an interesting statement if you really unpack it. There are Jewish people who connect very deeply through their prayer life. There are Jewish people who connect very deeply through study. There are Jewish people who connect very deeply through what we would call in the liberal tradition, tikkun olam, trying to make our world a better place. And there are Jewish people who connect very deeply through bagels and corned beef. There are sort of ethnic markers, and I don't mean markers, physical markers, but ways of life, things that we do, typical approaches to humor, whatever it is, where Jewish people will connect. And then there are religious ways. And it's all in the ball of Judaism, or of Jewish people. Yeah, that's the ethno part of the culture, is that you can be born into it, but you don't have to be born into it. And it's interesting, there's not one Jewish culture. There are Jewish cultures. So the primary Jewish culture that you see in the United States today is Ashkenazi Jewish culture. It came out of Europe between about 1880 and, was it 1914 or something, when the United States closed its borders. About 2.5 million people fled, Jewish people, fled primarily Eastern Europe and came to the United States because, well, the same reason everybody was coming. Many were running for their lives, trying to find food, and many were running towards a better life. Same reason people immigrate today. And so that's the primary culture that you see in the United States, but it's not necessarily the dominant Jewish culture in the world. There's a group called Mizrahi Jews. Those are Jews who lived in and created culture in Arab countries and North Africa. And then there are Sephardic Jews who were the descendants of people who were kicked out of Spain in 1492. Columbus wasn't the only thing that happened then in Spain. So those have distinct Jewish cultures. Then there are little subcultures, like there's a Roman Jewish culture that's at least 2,500 years old, that has its own little stuff going on. There are Jews from China. They primarily settled in a place called Kaifeng. There are Indian Jews who, some of them are members of my congregation now here in Oak Park. There are Indian Jews living in Oak Park. Although they're primarily in Israel and LA for some reason. Yes, probably the weather.
I sometimes perceive Judaism as involving covenants, commandments, laws, promises made by God.
Yes.
Commandments like love thy neighbor. Does the Jewish faith believe that God loves them? That like Christianity keeps telling us we are loved by God.
Yes.
Do you get that through
Yes.
Judaism as well? And
that we love God. So we pray, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your strength, and with all your might. We pray that daily. And we believe God loves us too. We don't believe that God exclusively loves us, but that we have a covenantal relationship with God. And God can have a relationship with other peoples too. Clearly, we even see in the Torah that God has relationships with non-Jewish people. With Moses' father-in-law Jethro. Yes?
So, going back to Janet's question in terms of the idea of Judaism as, I think you said ethno-religion.
Yes.
I'm curious, so to me inherent in that is there's this built-in sense of belonging to the Jewish community, sort of past, present, and future. You talked about that.
Yes.
I'm curious within, outside of sort of the cultural component with the religious component, how does Judaism today make space in a religious setting for people who either struggle with the idea of sort of the foundational statement, hear Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one.
Mm-hmm.
So if they struggle with the idea of a deity or they reject it outright. Like, what is the place for them within Judaism from a religious
It's such an
component?
interesting question. There's an old Jewish joke that a young man goes to his father and says, "Why do you go to pray every Shabbat? I know you don't believe in God. We've talked about that before." And the man says, "Well, Mr. Cohen at the shul goes to talk to God. Mr. Cohen at the synagogue goes to talk to God. I go to talk to Mr. Cohen." So there's this sense of peoplehood and belongingness can sometimes be in the if people connect in some way, that's okay. In any way they connect. So we talked about the name Israel, one who struggles with God. The important thing for me, and I tell this to the kids when they're 13 years old, about to become bar mitzvah, it's not what you believe, it's that you're engaged in the conversation. You have to just put yourself out there and think about it and work it and struggle with it and don't close doors. Just keep wrestling. That's the important part.
Let me,
You know,
maybe kind of,
that's very similar to this church.
That's,
A lot of people here
well, this is a liberal church, right? Reform Judaism is liberal Judaism. It's a different. We may have more in common with one another in terms of our approaches to God than we have in common with me with Orthodox Jews or you with Orthodox Christians of some sort.
so I guess a more pointed way of asking, like if someone came to you, your congregation, they said, let's say they were born into a Jewish family, but they say, I can't accept any of these sort of religious ideas. Are they fully welcome to participate in the life of the synagogue? Like,
They're welcome on their own terms.
okay.
As long as their own terms don't involve being incredibly disruptive. Okay, so she considers herself part of the Jewish people, but does not connect to the Jewish religion. I know we have to wrap up, and you have to get to church, but
The African Americans and Jewish.
well, many Jewish people are African American. Fully 20% of American Jewish community is Jews of color, or are Jews of color. And we have I don't know if you've been watching the special on PBS over the last, so it's strong. I'm passing around right now, actually, a tweet put out by Michael Twitty. Have any of you heard of him before? Michael Twitty is an African-American Jewish man, and he tweeted this out in 2019. The thing I love the most about the Jewish people is that we are defined by our inherent ambiguity. We are the quasi-ethnic, post-racial, multi-denominational, multicultural, transnational, rooted and sometimes rootless, self-critiquing, self-loving monument to an agnostic monotheism. So, I think that is a very good summary of who we are and who we strive to be at our best. And I encourage you to read, he's a great, Michael Twitty, great cookbook author. He has a book called Kosher Soul that connects his African roots to Jewish life. For those of you who, we have to wrap up?
Yeah, so I
Okay.
just want you to say something about this incident 3 years ago when we celebrated service in the temple.
So, with Reverend Edgerton, when he was your pastor here, there were some, there was a controversial thing that happened at the church, and it got way blown out of proportion by the right-wing press. And because there was a potential danger to the church, we invited your church over to have, was it Monday, your Monday, Thursday observance at our synagogue, and it took place with your walk in our synagogue as opposed to in your church. It was our honor to be able to host you, and it happened to be on the eve before we celebrated Passover. And your church and our congregation all came together, and we reset for Passover, and then some members of your church stayed for our Seder as well. It was a lovely moment. I know that you have to go. I'm sorry you have to go. I could do this for another hour. But I have 2 articles for you, should you wish to read them. One is an article by Abraham Joshua Heschel, who was a remarkable philosopher and theologian. It's titled God, Torah, and Israel, and it's an overview of Judaism. And another is from a group called the Pluralism Project at Harvard University, also titled God, Torah, and Israel, which is an excellent introduction to Judaism, written in a very clear way. So I'm going to leave these with Marcia, and she can help everybody figure out how to get them. Thank you so much for having me. I hope your worship is meaningful.
Yes, it's over.